Today we're letting Sims do whatever they want without any intervention on my end. This is Aimee Meadows and this is Kurtis Meadows. Aren't they just the loveliest couple of twins? Aimee explained to her brother that she wanted to buy a stereo. Then she fished for compliments, expecting him to tell her how good of an idea it would be to buy a stereo and put it in the living room on the coffee table, where the stereo belongs. Some neighbours came by to welcome the twins to the neighbourhood, so they went indoors, had a little dance and pretended not to hear them. When that first plan didn't work, Aimee opted to let the guests in while she herself remained outside, smiling plainly into the void. Given time on her own to think, Aimee decided that she wanted a pool of minimum size 1x1 square, so she bought a 1x1 square pool. This is technically what she wanted. While Kurtis sat inside entertaining the guests, Aimee stood outside, smiling politely like a waiter who's just been asked for something that's not on the menu. One particularly presumptive visitor took the liberty of jumping into Aimee's pool. As the pool intruder explained that she was interested in tanks, Aimee imagined what it would be like to watch her get run over by one. Shortly thereafter, a different guest arrived and got in the pool, and Aimee made it clear that she thought very little of her. Undeterred by Aimee's open hostility, more and more people began to flood into the front garden. One male guest described a script he'd written, and it was so embarrassing that a nearby B-list celebrity left in disgust. Then, at a precise moment in time, everybody left. Aimee popped a quick selfie and then watched as her brother leapt into the new pool, immediately acquiring the fitness skill. Once he was finished, Aimee had some time to sit alone with her thoughts. She sat out there for hours, contemplating existence itself before deciding that she needed the toilet. And then she sat there for even longer. Eventually, Aimee was forced to give in to her most basic instincts, and then she stood, staring into the mirror, for hours, trying not to cry. By this point, Kurtis had gone to bed, and although Aimee was hungry, she was not hungry enough to eat the fruitcake that had been left by one of the guests. And so, with an empty stomach, Aimee put herself to bed, hoping that tomorrow would be a better day. Kurtis's day got off to a rocky start. He desperately needed the toilet, and he desperately needed to feast. After relieving himself, he stood in the bathroom staring into a mirror, trying not to cry. Out of the blue, he received a phone call from the man he met yesterday, asking if he would like to join a select group known as the Avant-Gardes. Kurtis said he'd love to join, and literally the second he hung up, he received another phone call inviting him to hang out at a nearby cafe. This, Kurtis reasoned, was completely normal. It turned out the Avant-Gardes were a group of nerds who liked to hang out in cafes and drink coffee and talk about books and writing. Kurtis fit right in. While everyone else in the club headed indoors, Kurtis opted instead to stand outside alone. Eventually, and I do mean eventually, Kurtis decided to join the rest of the club. He sat down at one of the tables and ate an absolutely massive piece of Dairy Lee. While his stomach settled, he googled dragons and inadvertently acquired the gaming skill. He managed to strike up a conversation with a nearby woman, but she walked away while he was mid-sentence. This is the same fate that meets all who acquire the gaming skill. Having failed to make any new friends, Kurtis returned to standing on his own outside. Without a word, he began to visibly reek. Upon returning home, Kurtis sent a playful text to a teenager who he'd met in the Avant-Gardes. The boy quickly replied, suggesting that Kurtis and he meet up in the nearby ruins. If you're looking for a fun day out, you can never go wrong with the ancient ruins. Unlike the teenagers who invite you there, ruins will never stand you up. Back at home, Aimee was recreating her favourite scene from Parasite in the pool. Kurtis stood watching her from a distance, reflecting on the day that he'd had. By the time Aimee came over to speak to him, Kurtis was visibly caked in what we hope was dirt. Aimee curtly explained that she wished she had devoured her brother in the womb. Thankfully, Kurtis did not have long to dwell on this thought, because he had been invited to attend bear night at the local bar. Kurtis arrived ready to party and forget his troubles. Nothing could ruin bear night. Kurtis was sat at a table with some furries when he became overwhelmed by a strong urge to steal something. A nearby statue of a chicken seemed like an easy target. Unfortunately, he was caught red-handed, but he played it off like he was looking for the toilet. One of the furries who had caught Kurtis attempting to steal the chicken gave him some wise words, explaining that he should find his passion and pursue that passion, and only there lies the gates to true happiness. Then an old woman came and berated the bear, and Kurtis was struck with a strong sense of sonder, recognizing for the first time that all those around him lived lives as complicated as his own. Kurtis walked away from Bear Night a changed man. He knew that he wanted to make something of himself. So he went home and ate peas straight from the fridge. Like a big bowl of peas. After a quick shower, he popped under the covers and hid from the world. But the world was not finished with him. Samuel Beckett once said that there is nothing funnier than unhappiness. After hearing about Kurtis's terrible day, Aimee was feeling good. She was in the kind of mood where she wanted to meet someone new and fish for compliments. As luck would have it, a total stranger was passing nearby, so Aimee legged it down the road hoping to intercept her. The run down the hill was a bit further than Aimee expected, but she got there in the end and asked the stranger what she thought about grilled cheese. Afraid of losing the one genuine human connection she had in her life, Aimee considered buying a bar to make visiting her house more attractive. She shambled home, knowing what needed to be done. It really did tie the lawn together. After setting up the bar by herself, Aimee needed a nap, something that Kurtis found hysterically funny. But before he could finish cackling, his phone rang. It was the criminals. And they wanted him to be a criminal, a level 5 criminal no less. Clearly someone had noticed his potential when he failed to steal that chicken. While Kurtis hit the pool to get in shape for his new job, Aimee woke up feeling like absolute death. The twins had a catch-up and a dance, and learning of her brother's new job, Aimee went on a spending spree, buying a TV, a pool light, and a dishwasher. This was turning into quite an expensive day. It's a good thing that crime famously pays very well. After some synchronized cloud gazing, Aimee went for another nap, while Kurtis made far too much mac and cheese. The two twins sat together and had a chat about espressos and how our actions are led by a fear of our inevitable deaths. Then Aimee announced she was hungry, and Kurtis did not tell her about the 3 family-sized portions of mac and cheese in the next room. Seeing no other option, Aimee went to sleep in Kurtis's bed, which drove him into a rage, leading him to kick over his own wheelie bin. The only thing left for Kurtis to do was to angrily dance until the sun came up. As a new day dawned, Kurtis was still feeling hurt by his sister's actions. Hoping to heal the rift between the two of them, he purchased a pool ladder, which is a device that is used to enter and exit a pool. Then he went back inside and started to feel uncomfortable because there were 3 family-sized portions of mac and cheese rotting in his kitchen. Then Aimee emerged and made things worse by setting herself on fire. While Kurtis did extinguish his sister, it was clear that she had her opinions on where the blame lay. The more time the two spent together in the kitchen, the more tense it became. Kurtis went to the bathroom and imagined the speech he would have given at his sister's funeral if he had allowed her to burn to death. Meanwhile, Aimee made a salad and then abandoned it before making another salad and nearly chopping off all of her fingers. Kurtis returned and asked Aimee what she thought would happen if he took all of the bats and blew them up. He never got to hear what she thought of his idea because the avant-gardes were at it again. Kurtis headed back to the cafe for more classic avant-garde capers. Unfortunately, Kurtis wasn't getting very much attention, so he tried collapsing on the floor. Nobody even tried to help. Thankfully, there was one member of the avant-gardes who seemed to have Kurtis's back, and Kurtis, no. Come on, man. Kurtis was in the mood for mischief. He shuffled his way over to the cafe sink, hoping to relieve himself down its drain. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a crowd, so he couldn't get to it. As a backup plan, he resorted to collapsing on the floor again. Mischief managed. When Kurtis got home, Aimee was blaring pop music and watching late-night talk shows in the middle of the day. She either didn't hear her twin collapse in the bathroom, or actively decided not to help. After a time, the two were reunited on the sofa, one softly stinking, and the other eating a disgusting-looking salad. Then Kurtis passed out again, and Aimee wandered off. Kurtis awoke to a phone call informing him that his first day at work would start in an hour's time. He was exhausted and very hungry, but you know what they say. Gotta do crimes. Aimee calmly explained to Kurtis that she hoped he died at work in a fiery explosion that would be visible across the whole town. Kurtis replied that when he had a fast car and fat stacks of cash, she would wish that she had never said something so cruel. And then he walked out the door and vanished into the night.
Let's go!